I'll be right back.
So, anyways, good luck. We keep up together. Sure. This time.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the side events. And first of all, I'd just like to really offer our sincere thanks both to the co-organizers, ECLAC, UNECE, and World Bank for the side event here on multi-stakeholder support for Escazu and Aarhus implementation. Just to introduce myself, my name is Sean O'Connell. I'm the moderator, and I'm the global focal point on environmental justice for UNDP. And I would again like to thank you for coming on for this fourth day for many of you. Very busy schedule, very busy agenda. And as has always been the case, we have a lot to say in this discussion, not a huge amount of time. So I'm going to try and move relatively quickly. Maybe just to remind those, for the real objective of this discussion today is to just explore some good practices on capacity development, both across Aarhus and Escazú, and with half an eye on strengthened cooperation between both the convention and the agreements. So without further ado, I think we can really kickstart. I've been asked maybe just first to do a little bit of housekeeping, which is there will be a light lunch served just outside here afterwards. So apologies for keeping you hungry, but I'm with us. And also, I know some of you have to get back by 3 p.m. to the plenary. So we are actually going to try and shave some minutes off this if we can, but we do have a lot of speakers. So we do ask if you're going to make interventions from the floor, you make them relatively quickly, and speakers could keep to the time. Other than that, I think we can get straight into it. We were very lucky to have such a high-level lineup of speakers, given the agenda. And I think no better place to start to help open and set a context. We'll hear from Mr. Marco Keiner, the Director of the Environment Division from UNECE. So Marco, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues, participants. It's my big pleasure to be with you this afternoon. And on this side event on multi-stakeholder support for the implementation of Escazu and Aarhus agreements. These are two landmark treaties that share a common vision. It is all about empowering people with the right to access environmental information and to participate in decision-making and also to seek justice. They are not only legal instruments, but I would say they are frameworks for inclusive governance, environmental democracy, and public engagement in sustainable development. Today, as we all know, we meet at the time of unprecedented global challenges, to mention only the ones in the field of environment, climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And they affect every of our lives, particularly those who are living in vulnerable situations. And we are convinced that to address these challenges, good governance, transparency, and cooperation are essential. That is why our discussion will focus on how we can strengthen interregional cooperation and multi-stakeholder partnerships. Both of the two treaties we look at this afternoon call for collaboration beyond borders, sharing experiences, building capacities, and promoting their principles in other international forums. Both treaties also share common challenges: digitalization of public administration and access to information, public participation in energy and mining sectors, disaster preparedness and response, and maintaining effective justice institutions. For many years now, the multi-stakeholder Aarhus Convention capacity building coordination framework, with many partners that are present here today, promoted awareness raising, legislative reforms, judicial capacity building, youth engagement, and other important activities in many countries. Learning from good practices and innovative, cost-effective solutions across regions, and also scaling them up to build institutional and individual capacities for implementing these treaties can, I'm sure, strengthen the environmental governance, enhance also stakeholder engagement, and accelerate the realization of environmental rights. With this, I wish you all a forward-looking, productive discussion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marco. Very important discussion. I'm glad you'll be able to stay with us. For some points maybe for you to pick up on later. But without further ado, we're going to go straight to Mr. Carlos de Miguel Alonso, the Director of the Sustainable Development Division of ECLAC, who is currently in Belém at COP30, and he has kindly agreed to share some opening from the perspective of ECLAC. So, Carlos, the floor is yours, and we're going to project you onto the screen here. You informed us you're in your hotel room, but you can't see anything behind you, so you're free.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Boas tardes para vocês. It's a pleasure to address you from Belém, where precisely we are discussing about the things that has been mentioned before. We are discussing here about climate change, but indeed we are discussing about strengthening democracy, human rights, and sustainable development. And this is what it is about, the Escazú Agreement and the Aarhus Convention. These are instrumental treaties to do these challenges, to overcome these challenges that we have and we are facing in the world. The Escazú Agreement, before I mention some things, I want to thank the Aarhus Convention and the UNECE, also the World Bank, for the whole support during the negotiation and now the implementation, and I'll give my regards to Magdi that I see over there, and she had a program on building bridges when we were starting the negotiation that was very instrumental for us in those days. Escazú is about alliance. We build the agreement from the floor, from the bottom, with the people, for the people, and it was through alliance with the whole multi-stakeholders. And we have continued such as that. The people were in the negotiation, and the people is participating in all the stages of the agreement, now also in the implementation. In the last COP, the parties agreed to develop roadmaps for the implementation at the country level. 7 countries has made already that, with the support, by the way, of the World Bank, UNDP, UNECE, and UNEP and others. And in this, by the way, in this roadmap, the participation and the multi-stakeholder approach has been key. I saw that there was Chile there, but Chile, they have a long and huge participation process to bring together the roadmap. The other thing that is important in the Escazú Agreement is the cross-collaboration among Europe and Latin America and the Caribbean. You have many experience for many years, more than 20 years of the Aarhus Convention, but also you have the technical capacities and sometimes the financial support that we require here. We are now, for example, working on PRTRs, and you have these PRTRs in place. In Latin America, we don't have these PRTRs in place. You have a lot of environmental and climate change information that we lack in many countries in Latin America, particularly in those in the Caribbean sub-region. And this is, for example, one of the stakeholders approach that we have put in place to develop climate change indicator in the 6 independent countries of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. So along the process of negotiating the agreement, but now in the implementation, the approach from the Escazú Agreement has been to engage with everybody. We call it here in the Escazú Agreement the public, and the public is all the people, all the organizations. We don't have the major groups, but we play with all of them. So for us, the opportunity to collaborate with the parties of the Aarhus Convention with political will to implement the Escazú Agreement in Latin America, to ratify the Escazú Agreement in Latin America, particularly in those countries that still are in the process. Now we are in the middle of the ratification process of Brazil, by the way, is important, but also sharing the knowledge, the technical capacities that you have in Europe, in the Aarhus parties, with the countries of Latin America and to support the implementation. And finally, also the civil society, the public of the Aarhus Convention. I remember I mentioned this Building Bridges program, which was instrumental. We need to continue with such a programs where also the public, the civil society, can collaborate with the civil society in Latin America. Strengthen democracy those days, multilateralism and sustainable development is not easy in the world and also in the region. So this cross collaboration between the two treaties is fundamental. So thank you very much, and I will be listening your conversations.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and thanks you again to Marco, and again, thanks for putting special emphasis on two of the key points today, which is who do we need around the table and what type of capacities they might need. These are going to be key for our discussion moving forward. I'd just like to share that actually for the third opening remarks, my colleague Robert Bernardo is actually not available, and he has he has to travel at the last moment, offered to make a video message. He slightly declined. He said there's a risk of oversaturation of UNDP. I said I didn't think that was possible, but he has kindly agreed to allow me to just take the discussion forward. So thank you for Robert. So we're going to thank you again to both Marco and Carlos for the opening. We're going to move on to the panel now. But before I do, maybe just a quick explanation of a little bit of background to this. From UNDP side, we're very fortunate that we're in a position to support both Escazú and Aarhus implementation. Decades of experience in Aarhus, and we're building experience for Escazú. So what's been a real benefit of this, and I think maybe Nicholas from the World Bank can speak to it as well, is it's a real privileged position to be able to support both, and it's a real privileged position to be able to begin or continue exchanging the learning between both agreements. So that's kind of our motivation here. One of the things we've done in this context is we have, together with the World Bank and UNEP, set up a working group, an environmental justice working group, to see how we can do this better. We're working very closely with ECLAC and UNECE about integrating and coordinating better support across both agreements. And maybe finally, just to mention something that's really important for us, might come up a little bit later, is the importance of tools, tools that might be needed for these capacities, tools for judges, tools for civil society, guidance for governments, ministries, inspectorates, etc. Just to name a few, we've just launched guidance for with the World Bank last week on legal foundations for the just energy transition. So it's a topic that's come up quite a lot. How do we ensure international human rights and other important frameworks to help guide the just energy transition? So that's on UNDP. Now, very briefly, I think this is, before we go into panel, what's the background to this? We have to start by saying this is nothing new, and it's already been mentioned, there's been a lot of exchange. So we're not claiming to introduce anything new. We're trying to continue discussions with the World Bank, ECLAC, and UNECE. What we discussed was how can we make this a little bit more systemic, the exchanges? How can we make it a little bit more coordinated? So this is one effort, and with the help of David and Carlos, for the meeting of parties, the conference of parties in April next year, we're hoping to have another side event, which again promotes this Escazu and Aarhus exchange. And maybe one other unique thing to guide our discussion is that we're really seeing more lessons coming from Escazú. Obviously, the experience was tilted much more in Aarhus' favor, given the length of time the convention has been in force. But now we think there's a lot more needed to discuss in terms of what can be learned from Escazú. So, with that, I would actually like to turn straight away to our first panelist, His Excellency Colin Murdoch, the Ambassador of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States to the United Nations in Geneva. Colin, and to other speakers, we have very flexible, open discussion on your perspectives on what have been some challenges faced in enhancing capacities of stakeholders for Aarhus or Escazú implementation. What are some good examples of good practice? And if there are any ideas looking forward for strengthening cooperation. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everyone, to colleagues and participants. My name is Colin Murdoch, and I represent the OECS, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States here in Geneva. First, I often find it necessary to say a word about the OECS itself. And the OECS is an intergovernmental organization. It's an economic union of small islands in the Eastern Caribbean, which are so small that they have decided to consolidate their populations, their markets, their structures, to achieve greater effect in the international community. And another interesting thing about the OECS is that it comprises 6 independent member states: Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, and the 3 saints, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But it also comprises 6 non-independent territories: 3 British overseas territories and 3 French territories as well: Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Saint Martin. And these are actually parts of France, département, who elect representatives to the National Assembly in Paris. So it's very much a mixed situation, and I think this is perhaps one of the greatest challenges that we face in the implementation. Some of the characteristics that we observe and the challenges are technological, financial, and human resource constraints. These are small islands, and they have limited capacity in many areas. We have inconsistent data collection and data fragmentation. We have lack of protocols and policy awareness for data collection and sharing. And quite often there is a reluctance and a delay in actually sharing the data across different jurisdictions. But there are some good practices in addressing some of these challenges that we face. There's collaboration with ECLAC, establishing a regional environmental information system, RACE, to facilitate reporting obligations for SGDs, Escazú, and MEAs. This aims to enhance data accessibility, improve coordination, and promote data sharing, with a focus on capacity, ownership, and sharing at the national level. We also use complementary initiatives. The launch of the Regional Environmental Monitoring Data Point Portal, REMDAP, in March 2024, facilitated by Jeff, UNEP, and WECO initiative, serves as a clearinghouse mechanism using existing GIS online capability to integrate and visualize data, including environmental dashboards, and an agreement to promote with IUCN for the OECS to host the Caribbean Protected Area Gateway as part of the broader RACE architecture. Now, there are opportunities for cooperation as well. But before that, I just want to mention that we endorse a stakeholder engagement strategy with CANARI to support a whole of society approach to environmental governance, serving as a regional standard. Actually, the OECS applauds the inclusivity of Escazú, ensuring a strong voice for Indigenous peoples, youth, women, and civil society. Escazú, Article 11, cooperation, promotes consideration for small island developing states and encourages partnerships with states from other regions, interregional cooperation. The revised Treaty of Bastia, which is the foundational treaty establishing the OECS, requires member states to implement the St. George's Declaration of Principles for environmental sustainability in the OECS, to minimize environmental vulnerability, improve environmental management, and protect the region's natural, including historical and cultural resources, for optimal social and economic benefits for the member states. The revised St. George's Declaration, dubbed SGD 2040, now includes recognition of and reference to the Regional Agreement on Access to Information public participation and justice in environmental matters in Latin America and the Caribbean, Escazú, which aligns seamlessly with the enduring principles of the St. George's Declaration, with particular note to Escazú. Article 5, access to environmental information. Article 6, generation and dissemination of environmental information. Article 7, public participation in the environmental decision-making process. The remaining members and associate members, as I said, 3 British overseas territories and 3 French overseas departments, are all, by extension, parties to the Aarhus Convention. And efforts are made to ensure that the environmental, climate change, and disaster data gaps in the OECS member states are addressed. Sustainability, collection, production, and dissemination of data and indicators is essential for sound policy making and should be reinforced. So I mentioned before the challenges associated with implementation, and this is due to the physical characteristics of small island developing states separated, and also there are different jurisdictions. So they have different methods of data collection. There is the language aspect as well, the French department, the English-speaking territories, and actually OECS is now in discussion with Dutch Sint Maarten, who also wish to become an associate member. So shortly, Dutch will also be part of the conversation. So I think you can understand the complexity, even though it's a small area, I think there's a certain complexity involved in trying to get the Aarhus and the Escazú conventions implemented. So I would like to stop there, and then perhaps I could answer some questions and interactive dialogue.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And I think it's a very good position the OECS is in, the application of both agreements in a context, and very important as well that you're building on what already has happened in St. George's Declaration. It's important. It's not here to replace those, it's to enforce and adapt them. So thank you very much for that, Your Excellency. And I'd like to move on now to Mr. Francisco Jose Carvalho from the Deputy Permanent Representative of Chile to the UN in Geneva. So the floor is yours, Francisco.
Thank you very much, Sean and Excellencies, colleagues. It's very nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting Chile to this important conversation. I would like to start by quoting Antonio Guterres when the Escazú Agreement was adopted back in 2018. He made these remarks. The Escazú Agreement is a historic achievement for the region and for the world. In addition to being the most recent multilateral environmental agreement to have been negotiated and adopted under the auspices of the United Nations, the Escazú Agreement is also Latin America and the Caribbean's first regional environmental treaty. Perhaps most notably, it is the first such treaty to include specific provisions for the protection and promotion of human rights defenders in environmental matters. So I think these few remarks summarize very well what is the specifics of Escazú if we compare it to Aarhus and to other environmental agreements, multilateral environmental agreements. Chile was from the start very much engaged in promoting this agreement. It took us a little bit of time to sign it due to political government at the time that was in Chile. But in his first week in office, the current president of Chile, Gabriel Boric, back in 2022, in March 2022, he was inaugurated, and the first bill he sent to the Congress was the ratification of the Escazú Agreement. And it was ratified in just 3 months' time. So in 2022, the Escazú Agreement was in force in Chile, and let's remember that the agreement entered into force globally for Latin America and the Caribbean in 2021, just one year before. So we started from 2022 having a series of capacity building activities for seeking the implementation. We asked generously UNEP and ECLAC provided 2 very useful surveys and analysis of what was required to have an adequate implementation of the treaty. And we had on this road to implementation, we had a national plan with early participation stage and public consultation that was extremely wide and very well attended by the public. We had 16 workshops just in 2022 and 23, 12 workshops dedicated to indigenous people, 4 meetings with children and teenagers. And we also had self-convened town meetings. We organized 40 of them with hundreds of participants all over the country. So this led us to sign to officialize a national plan for implementation in 2024 for the following 6 years until 2030, with 5 strategic lines. The first one is access to environmental information. Second, participation in environmental decision-making. Third, access to environmental justice. Fourth, human rights defenders in environmental matters. And the fifth, the last one, capacity building and cooperation. And what is specific about this plan for implementation is we have a multi-level governance system in which we have a national, which is called the main body is a National Public-Private Strategic Council, in which, as its name says, we have the government, state, and also CSO companies, private companies, civil society, NGOs participating in this plan, and also we have regional strategic committees as well. So this also leaves a true space for sub-state local governments to participate. At the regional level, I would like to stress that there was a very early interest in fully implementing the Article 9 of Escazú, which relates to guaranteeing a safe and enabling environment for human rights, environmental defenders especially. So we had the first COP was in Chile back in 2022, and a decision was adopted to create an ad hoc open-ended working group on human rights defenders, and that led to COP3, in which we adopted an action plan on human rights defenders in environmental matters. And with this action plan covers from 2024 to 2030. So the Secretariat of Escazú, in this case, ECLAC, as you know, has been extremely helpful in encouraging the implementation of this plan, and with a very open approach to also with this multi-stakeholders approach, and just to stress the role also of the subsidiary body that Escazú has, which is called the Committee to Support Implementation and Compliance of Escazú, And by the way, Chile was the first country that proposed organized a visit to the country by this committee. So I would say that what is really important in implementing Escazú is that we have recognized the critical social and environmental situation in which this goes beyond environmental matters. It builds a culture of justice, transparency, and trust among citizens and between citizens and authorities. And this is clearly an opportunity for a fairer and more sustainable democracy. So to end, I'm ending. Escazú is clearly inspired by Aarhus, but it's not a copy-paste. We added a special mention of stress for human rights defenders and with a stronger human rights grounding, and also with a special mention and importance given to indigenous people. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. And two hallmarks of Chile's commitment to Escazú really on participation. You really practice what you preach, and you've enhanced your capacities and civil society's capacities. We've seen it firsthand. We've organized tripartite dialogues with the governments of Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina on the issue of participation in mining. We've really seen that commitment, of course, for human rights defenders coming from the COP in Santiago. So thank you for that. A really, really important contribution. So moving on now, I'm going to ask Ms. Claudia Fusco, the Director General for the Environment of the European Commission, to give us her remarks. Over to you, Claudia.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here for the discussion on this topic. We also warmly welcome also the entry into force of the Escazú Agreement, as mentioned by the ambassador in 2021. And I think maybe your experience in Chile can also be extended to other countries in the area so that they can ratify also swiftly the agreement. I would agree with you. It's not only a copy-paste. Maybe it's even an improved version to a certain extent. This is maybe a matter of discussions later on, but for sure the two agreements have a lot in common, and rightly so, I would say. And I will also refer to what Director Kleiner said before. There are really two landmarks, these two agreements, in ensuring the sustainable development, justice, public participation, environmental governance. These are really taken into consideration. But why we think that these principles are quite, let's say, obvious to a certain extent, but I would say that, and they're universally relevant, the implementation of this agreement creates a lot of challenges also in the EU. I also heard you say in in the high-level segment, Mr. Mint, that implementation is an issue, and I think is one of the issues in the EU as well. Of course, we tackle that with a strong legal framework and also with some support. And that's why my directorate title actually encompasses what we want to do in the EU, because it's compliance, governance, and support. And I think these are the three elements that I would like to point out in my intervention. So implementation is one of the challenges. The second one is maybe also the difference in national jurisdiction that make also the ability of stakeholders to act. So that's the second one. And the third, we also share the views of the participation of, let's say, the most marginalized part of the society. So indigenous people, also vulnerable groups. So to take up their role into this field. So I said, what are we doing to address those challenges? Let's say three things. First, we need a strong legal framework. I think we have put in place since also the Aarhus Convention was agreed, and we are continuing. Our president is very much committed towards democracy. She announced this already in the guidelines when she took let's say, power, and also recently there was another announcement. Even this week there is also another policy development which is very relevant for the topic, and especially on the EU societal strategy, so for the society. So we are making sure that our legislation is solid enough also to be taken seriously into account, and we are also trying to cover, for example, free media, so to make sure that also journalists are not attacked directly or indirectly by or stopped by their governments. we are also introducing in specific legislation some provisions to the possible extent. So we have a general framework overall, but we also are introducing provisions in sectoral legislation, air quality, for example, deforestation, but also circular economy action plan, urban wastewater treatment, again, to restate the importance also when applying this specific legislation. Then we are assisting, let's say, our member states, but also beyond the EU. And also we are providing, for example, TAIEX is one of the instruments that was born, I would say, to support the neighboring countries, to allow them to also to join the EU if they wish so, in the best way. But with this TAIEX, which is an instrument that allows cooperation exchanges across countries, is also applicable to the EU member state, but also beyond. So also in other regions of the world, and maybe that's something that we want to consider also for Escazú, for example. We also helped and supported the creation of an office in Brussels, for example, for the indigenous people. As far as the EU is concerned, when it's necessary, we also go with enforcement. I mean, nobody likes this. We don't like that. And that's why we say we want to engage with assistance, with support, and if there is a real need. But of course, we are in a rule of law, like a society, so we can go to the last step, I would say. Over in the international level, of course, we have a very close cooperation with the Latin America and the Caribbean. That's also even being reinforced more and more. Also very recently, we have supported the Aarhus Convention. We are very much engaged in the Aarhus Convention. We supported the creation also of the rapid response mechanism and with the work of the special rapporteur, so that's an important part. We also are active in the Mediterranean with workshops. We also, I think, work together with the World Bank in creating some workshops in Central Asia in 2025. So there are a number of activities that aim also to build the capacity of to overcome fragmentation and to build capacity within these regions and these countries. And then we engage at multilateral level in several places. My colleagues are also in COP30 in this moment, and their report. So in conclusions, we are doing a lot. I think we're very much committed, and we are helping. We are ready to continue the discussion and to share more and more between us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And I think it's safe to say that very little has changed as much globally in terms of national legislation as some of the moves that are happening within the EU. We see, we heard from the EUDR this morning, some of these moves that what's happening in the EU is having profound impact globally. We see that as UNDP. We see how countries are adapting quickly because of the economic might of the EU. And it's very important that you have all these safeguards in place, that you have these initiatives in place. It can have such a profound impact and really drive implementation of Escazu and Aarhus. So thank you for that. We're going to move on now and look for some country-specific examples, turning first to Ms. Nino Gokchalashvili, Vice Chairperson to the Bureau of the Aarhus Convention and Head of the Sustainable Development Division, Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, Georgia. So Nino, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much and good afternoon, everybody. I'm really happy to take part in this important discussions on the two main treaties on environmental and human rights, the Aarhus Convention and the Escazú Agreement. Both treaties bridge governments and the public in protecting the environment, recognizing that effective protection of the environment cannot be achieved by governments alone or by the public alone or by a single country. True progress requires cooperation based on transparency and trust, and it is essential. It demands continuous investment in capacity building for the implementation and for the development of national policy and legislation, for strengthening institutions, advancing implementation and enforcement, enhance knowledge, raise awareness and on environmental human rights and on our responsibilities as well towards protection of the environment. My country, Georgia, as a party to the Aarhus Convention, continues to strengthen implementation tools since its entry into force. One of the key mechanisms in this direction was the establishment of the Aarhus Center, Georgia, in 2005 as a OSCE project. One part is the policy and institutional development, and second part is very important to have the mechanism for its implementation. On the basis of this center, a new environmental information and education center was established under the Ministry of Environment Protection in 2013. With enhanced capacities and functions, including we put there environmental education and education for sustainable development as well. Through the center, everyone has a place to seek environmental information, or they are being engaged in environmental activities, discussions, and so on. Challenges exist, of course, in the implementation of the convention. Most of them were mentioned during this currently during the meeting, and we have to address them rapidly. I'd like to highlight one initiative to address them. What we are doing, it is our permanent building activities training program on environmental democracy and human rights and responsibilities. These trainings are conducted throughout the country for a wide range of stakeholders, including local communities, NGOs, the media, educational institutions, municipalities, government institutions, and judiciary, which is most important. The trainings introduce the principles of the convention, emphasize the vital role in the development of the country, in the population well-being, why it's necessary, and address topics also such GMOs, PRTRs, especially and more importantly, it refers to the compliant committee tasks and activities and also rapid response mechanism. What the population can do, how and when. This for protection their environmental rights. These conversations during the training go far beyond traditional trainings. They empower societies to act, to use their rights, to engage meaningfully in environmental activities and decision making, and to hold institutions accountable in a constructive way. For the proper implementation of the Aarhus Convention, we think, and it is true, that support of international institutions and organizations is essential. We cooperate with them actively. I will not list them now, but will mention about the latest developments of the country. For example, last year's UNDP conducted a nationwide assessment of environmental justice and prepared recommendations, developed a specialized training model and trained judges across the country aiming at strengthening judicial capacities on environmental justice. With the partnership of our national local NGO, conducted UNDP large-scale awareness raising campaigns on access to environmental justice that reached more than 300,000 people. It includes lawyers, journalists, activists, students, and community groups. And we're thankful for the organization. However, when it comes to the Aarhus Convention, we cannot say that we have achieved our goal. The more we do, the more we identify new needs and challenges, especially for stronger coordination between institutions, better integration of access rights into sectoral policies as well. Rapid development of electronic tools and the digital platforms is necessary to make participation more inclusive, especially for communities beyond urban areas. More systematic approaches to environmental education and so on. So for effective implementation of the Aarhus Convention, we must continue investing in capacities, but not only legislative and institutional, but also human, because we empowered public can make environmental rights effective. It became more actual nowadays when we face the global environmental challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, planetary crisis, which requires rapid and coordinated action at all levels, guided by the principles of environmental democracy first. I think that today's event is more than only exchange of experiences. It is an opportunity to envision new partnership between regions, institutions, and organizations, and the public as well. The Aarhus and Escazú communities have much to learn from each other and serve as inspiring examples of cross-regional cooperation and should cooperate. because by sharing our experiences across our two regions, UNECE and ECLAC, we expand not only our collective knowledge, identify common challenges, gaps, or building needs and priorities, but also deepen our shared commitment to protect the environment. And that I think it's very important and essential for the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nino, and thank you so much as well for the cooperation at the national level. I think one of the things that we've always appreciated working closely with all actors in Georgia is how practically minded some of the actors are. You get your sleeves up if there's capacity to be enhanced. Training has to start, and that's how it's worked. And I think, as you said, one of the things we'll be looking to do is to share some of those experiences from Georgia with others. Just to mention, on the judges training, we've already shared those experiences with other judiciaries who are interested in enhancing the capacity on Aarhus implementation. So thank you very much, Nino, and look forward to continued cooperation. Now, again, sorry for rushing everyone. Usually when we invite speakers, a few drop out, but everyone decided to accept our invitation. So usually we estimate for a couple of dropouts. But anyway, Nicholas, without further ado, you've spoken once or twice at the meeting so far, but as Global Manager for Social Development for the Planet and Vice President of the World Bank, what are your insights into Aarhus and Escazú?
Thank you, Sean. And yes, I don't envy your job, but there's a lot of us and not a lot of time. I think there's also, I'm curious to hear views from the room, so I will try to be brief. It's a pleasure to be here, first of all, to participate in this panel, to talk about the importance of multi-stakeholder support for the Aarhus Convention and the Escazú Agreement. I think the focus of both of those agreements on environmental access rights and on strengthening transparency, accountability, and governance and environmental decision-making are critical, and they're objectives that the bank fully supports. And so we've been extremely happy to work with national governments, with regional organizations, and with partners like UNDP and others to support the implementation. You asked to hear a little bit about specific country examples. Let me turn first to some of the work that we've done in Latin America under the Escazú Agreement, with work that was supported by the Human Rights Trust Fund in the bank. And the manager for the Human Rights Trust Fund and the team leader for that particular grant are both connected. So I'll try not to introduce too many mistakes into the excellent points that they've asked me to convey. So the first challenge that we faced was figuring out how best to channel the bank's support. And so we really appreciated the partnership with ECLAC, and we heard from our ECLAC colleague this morning in terms of understanding exactly where our support would be most useful. And so we ended up, as a result of those conversations, to sponsor the first and second regional forums on human rights defenders on environmental matters. I think this was both tremendously appreciated in the region. We provided resources to enable defenders and CSO representatives to participate in the forums. And those discussions were instrumental then in the discussions that led to the adoption of the first regional action plan on human rights defenders in environmental matters in April 2024. I want to say also that, for me, seeing the bank support these types of activities is really heartening. Human rights has been an area where the bank has tended to tread very carefully and with a lot of caution. And it's really wonderful when we have the ability to support our clients in advancing these issues. It helps us, I think, also as an institution to speak more confidently about the importance of human rights in broader discussions such as protecting the environment. The second challenge that we were dealing with was that, of course, not all countries have the same needs, right? And so part of what we needed to do was have an active dialogue to understand where countries were at and what would be most useful. So, for example, with Colombia back in 2023, Escazú ratification was pending with their constitutional court. But the Colombian Ministry of the Environment was keen to move forward on the right to participation. So we helped them map out their legal framework vis-a-vis the Escazú provisions on participation in anticipation of Escazú ratification. And I understand that right now, ECLAC, in fact, colleagues are building on that work to prepare, to help Colombia prepare their national Escazú roadmap. In Argentina, our support was broader. We provided both technical and financial assistance with a national baseline, which served as the analytical underpinning to their Escazú implementation roadmap and national implementation plan. And that was, again, in collaboration with many partners, including UNDP and ECLAC. In the case of Belize, we supported work to develop their Escazú implementation roadmap, and here ECLAC supported in-country consultations. And so I think, again, it's this sort of division of labor that sometimes, especially when we're dealing with these smaller engagements, is really helpful for us to understand from partners that have an ongoing sustained dialogue how we can best fill gaps, because that's really what we're aiming to do, right? We're not aiming to duplicate, but to come in and provide support where it's most helpful. I wanted to also briefly touch on the example of Chile, because I thought that you did such a wonderful job describing the consultative approach and the workshops that took place. And indeed, this was one of the points that my colleagues asked me to convey, in particular, the focus on engaging young people in those workshops. And so the bank supported 10 workshops in 5 different cities to strengthen the participation of young people in the Escazú process, which actually resulted then in a specific measure on youth participation in Chile's national plan. I think having that sort of more focused engagement with young people is really important, because we know from experience that oftentimes young voices are missing from some of these conversations. And so I think there's a lot here from these engagements that we can learn and apply in other settings. I think the other one on Chile, just to echo and to emphasize the engagement with indigenous peoples. Again, that's a group that we know from experience is often marginalized in some of these conversations, and obviously they play a key role. And so the bank supported the translation of the Escazú Agreement to 2 indigenous languages in Chile. And I think just the act of making that information available is quite important. So that's on Escazú. We've done a lot of work there. We were very fortunate to have this collaboration between the Human Rights Trust Fund and our legal and environmental colleagues to both mobilize the resources, but also understand where they would be most useful and most needed. We have also provided support for the Aarhus Convention over the years, including in 2023, when we were asked by Uzbekistan to help them with technical assistance as they were updating their environmental impact assessment legislation. We knew that they were considering accession to Aarhus, and so we engaged with them very much with the provisions of the convention in mind. We organized a workshop with UNECE, with OSCE and other experts such as the Environmental Law Institute, and that helped to inform a debate about updating the law, what would be required, information and public participation. The draft bill was eventually signed into law earlier this year, and as we heard this morning, Uzbekistan became the 48th party to the Aarhus Convention. I think there's other sort of country-specific examples that are worth going into as we continue this discussion, but maybe taking a step back. What I took away also from the last 2 days of discussion is that we've made important progress, but there's a lot still that needs to be done, right? And I think that in a changing global context, the question of how we can align support from different parties, from international organizations, from development partners, how we can forge effective partnerships with national governments, drawing on the work of the UN's regional commissions. I think that's really sort of at the heart of what I hope we can cover in our conversation this afternoon, because I think we all share these the aims and ambitions of those conventions, and so it's really a question, and for us as partners, how can we most effectively put together the different pieces of our support and lean into the areas where we have a comparative advantage to support national implementation and then global advancement of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicholas. Yeah, we have to start coordinating much better. We have to start filling gaps, but are prioritizing, because we've heard for the last 2 days the issue with resources. Very excited to see where the next iteration of the Human Rights Trust Fund goes. So very excited to hear if there's opportunities for coordinating more on that implementation, especially for Escazú. But thank you for that, Nicholas. Now, last but not least, because you already heard, Ms. Magdalena Toney-Nagy, if we're on a bridge here between Escazú and Aarhus, it's because she built it, and many of the others who have gone before to really strengthen cooperation between the two. So as Executive Co-Director of the Association and the Aarhus Eco Forum, a unique insight into the civil society experience. So Magdalena,
yes, thank you very much to Sean, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you for the thanks from ECLAC. We are really happy to see how intensively and dynamically the Escazú Agreement is developing and is being implemented. This is really a pleasure for us, since we have been involved in the support of the negotiation of the Escazú Agreement starting from 2015 with the support of Abu Dhabi, Netherlands, and Italy. And this very nice project was called Building Bridges Between Regions. And we closely cooperated with the ECLAC Secretariat and with the NGO community in Latin America. Our goal was to support that the civil society could organize itself and be able to participate efficiently in the negotiations of the Escazú Agreement, and provided support for meetings and also for travel of civil society representatives from different countries to the negotiations. Also organized capacity building workshops. And we were present throughout all of the negotiations. Unfortunately, after that, these projects were over. And since then, we are informally in touch with the civil society and with ECLAC. And whenever there is a request, we are there to share our experience and lessons learned. Of course, in this process, it was mentioned how much the Aarhus Convention lessons, experiences, let's say, were offered for the process of developing Escazú. And certainly in the process, these lessons, experiences were used, but there are similarities and differences. And Escazú was developed taking into account the specificities of the region and the countries who negotiated. So when we look at now how this cooperation between Escazú and Aarhus could be further developed. One of the challenges that I could mention is how to reflect in this cooperation these differences and also the similarities. How could we address in our cooperation between the two agreements, and how we can actually build on these and develop forms of cooperation. We have mentioned as EcoForum and Buta Environmental Law Association in last working groups and also in the MOP yesterday, that we would like to see a more systematic cooperation, if it is possible, between the two agreements. There is cooperation among the Secretariat, among the compliance committee, with the special rapporteur, and among the civil society networks off and on. But this is not on a permanent or let's say very solid basis. So we would like to suggest that we look into this in the next period. And another challenge is maybe we need to define some priorities, but how to define these priorities, how to define what is needed for the parties of the two agreements or for the civil society in this process. So we would like to suggest, for example, to establish a regular dialogue, not only on the level of those bodies that I mentioned, but on the level of parties and other stakeholders. We actually had a dialogue process earlier in this project, as I mentioned, online. And now that the funds are so scarce, it could be a digital platform, like a digital dialogue platform, for example, or also in-person platform. And we need for this, of course, the support of the parties and also some financial support. Also, we would like to mention that several parties already have projects they implement projects in the in the LAC region. And we would like to see if they are related to Escazú, what they are addressing, and how we could build synergies among these projects. What other needs are there that we could pick up, and especially with the help of parties and donors, those could be addressed. So we also suggest that we collect this information on this project, and maybe the capacity building initiative, which is a very useful tool in the Aarhus Convention process, could be also used to include these projects in this and see where are the missing links and topics. I'm talking from the point of civil society, and at the same time, I would not like to only see that the civil society is following one path and organizes its events, but it would be good really to join our forces and tackle together, and the multi-stakeholder approach was mentioned also in the Aarhus Convention. We have the same approach. We would like to see the civil society and other partners involved in the different processes and events. So when this dialogue platform or a dialogue could be involved, we'd like to see that all the parties and also civil society on both sides of the, let's say, Atlantic Ocean is involved. And thank you. I finish at this point because I may have been already.
No, your timing is perfect. But just want to thank you for, again, and unsurprisingly from Equal Forum, practical, very actionable suggestions. And I think what you've proposed is absolutely doable. I think it's something that as international organizations, at least sitting on the table, can take up and support member states to take forward. So thank you very much for that.
Sorry, one more.
Oh yeah, please.
If there will be such a, maybe could be a project or several projects, but we are happy to assist.
Oh, we'll make you the manager. You can share.
Implementing.
You will have to come back to you on that. No, thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely. And thank you for all the speakers. And you wouldn't believe we're trying to get out of here earlier than planned because people have to go back to the plenary. But I've been absolutely peppered with WhatsApp messages to allow people to speak from the floor and online. So I'm only going to have probably time to allow maybe 3, maybe with 2 in the room and 1 online. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Mr. Matthias Sauer from share some remarks from Germany. We'll go online then to a representative from Costa Rica, and then we'll come back to Sophia, who also want to take the floor. So maybe Matthias, over to you.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for this very interesting side event. I want to briefly report on our national implementation in Germany about the implementation of the convention. Germany is, for those Latin America not so familiar with the map, is quite unique as we are the European state with the most neighboring countries. We have 9 neighboring countries, all of them parties to the Aarhus Convention, and 9 of them also parties or member states of the European Union. So we share a common legal framework. Nevertheless, we have experiences in implementing all 3 pillars of the Aarhus Convention with all our neighbors. And building on what was said here, that you need constant dialogue also with your neighbors how to fulfill the 3 pillars with life. It's not so difficult with the first and the third pillar, as you need to open up your legal framework also for organizations and for citizens of the member states. But the second pillar concerning public participation is something where you really need to start a dialogue with your neighbors, how you can conduct out public participation processes which are transboundary. And we have this initiated with all our neighbors together with the implementation of the Escazu Convention, which is dealing with transboundary EIAs. And so Germany is a federal state, so it's always, even if you share the same legal framework, you always have things you need to discuss and come to common conclusion with your neighbors if you carry out real decision-making processes cross-border. You have competent authorities, you have different time frames, you have the language, translation problems, where you need to come to common conclusions. And that's why we have with all our neighbors a common dialogue, how to tackle these issues. For some of them, we have also regional documents, guidelines, common declarations. The most legally advanced is with our neighboring country, Poland, where we also have a bilateral treaty, where we have initiated and solved some legally binding some issues. So this is, in a nutshell, our recommendation as well for the Escazú countries, that on these complicated matters in real concrete decision-making cases, it's very good if you have some frame and some way to create a dialogue with your neighbors that you really can give the opportunity that the rights can be applied in practice. And this I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. McDonald, further to your point, sounds like Germany is volunteering to be the first to do that sharing. Thank you very much. And I'm going to go online now. And apologies, I get your Miss Irina Murillo from Costa Rica would like to take the floor. Irina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here this morning. I am one of the 6 elected representatives of the public for the Escazú Agreement. This is a particular participation mechanism in this convention, and we have several functions, but we're here to encourage and facilitate public participation to represent the public at the conferences of the parties and other meetings, and do consultations with the public. As you can see, this is a very challenging role, and considering this is all volunteer work and we have no resources for it, we do have developed some strategies that I'd like to share with you this morning. And since we have very little time, I wanted to give you one example of what we have done to try and do the best of this very challenging role that we have. And the main strategy for our work has been the work with networks. And these multi-stakeholder networks have been our way to maximize the impact of the role and to help facilitate participation of the public throughout Latin America and the Caribbean in the Escazú processes and the implementation, the national implementation of the Escazú Agreement. 3 small examples, but we work very widely with all the networks that we can identify, including youth networks, indigenous peoples networks, etc. But 3 specific examples of it. There's the Escazú Ahora network, which is a regional network, is perhaps the senior network in the region. Some of the members have participated since the negotiation process of the agreement. This network is more focused on follow the agenda, the broader agenda, but also, I'm sorry, supporting the national processes of ratification and of implementation. Other networks in Central America are more focused on engaging local organizations, communities, defenders, indigenous groups, or even religious networks, and on spreading information about the agreement and the process in each of the countries. This network also supports national processes of ratification or implementation. And there's a 3rd example in the Caribbean network, which is the youngest of the 3. that is a focus on knowledge sharing. And why do we think this is the best approach? The engagement of the people, I think, is one of the main challenges to support the implementation of these two agreements. I dare say in the two agreements. But for Latin America and the Caribbean, this had been key because of the capacity of the public to support and to push sometimes for the advances of the agenda. And in this case, we found that the processes are better because of the public engagement. So if I can share a conclusion of all this work with you.
Meeting of the parties the same in February. Oh no,
Sorry,
in slept.
Sorry, can someone mute themselves? We just had someone, we've lost precious time. Go ahead, Arina, you have 20 seconds and 40 to conclude. Go ahead, please.
So I'll make the most of it. The implementation needs the participation, the support, but also the critical vision of the public. And we need to facilitate the public's engagement in these processes. And yes, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Irina.
Finishing my time.
No, thank you, and for sharing again what is a uniquely Escazú initiative that we need to learn and reach promote cooperation across. We're really out of time. I know some people here have to rush down to the plenary. So if you don't mind, if you are going to speak from the floor, you unfortunately only have 60 seconds. So if Ms. Tina Janatovic from Serbia would like to make some remarks, Tina, the floor is yours.
I would like to explain a little bit about the project that was developed in Serbia with support of the OSCE, Ministry of Environmental Protection, large project for the development of the new strategy for the implementation of the Aarhus Convention MOP-8. The expert team prepared the draft of the strategy and also the regulatory assessment, also with support of OSCE, and in partnership with the network of open centers in Serbia and also with support of OSCE, Ministry organized public consultation on the first draft of the strategy. And of course, we are planning to adopt this strategy as soon as we hold the public debate strategy. And also we have so many activities listed in the action plan, and hoping that we'll get support and cooperation in implementation.
Thank you so much, Tina. Thank you so much. And again, I appreciate. Oh, sorry, we just have to put someone on mute here. I've been fighting on WhatsApp with someone to allow Massimiliano Montini to allow to speak. So Massimiliano, you can cut to 45 seconds, but please take the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. It was very nice to listen to you, and I would like just to share an idea with you. Being engaged in the academic community, both in Europe and in Latin America in recent years with many colleagues, we actually developed the idea that it might be interesting to link the academic communities of the two conventions to support implementation. And I would like to be here to represent the voice of several academics who have been already starting to work on these issues. And we would like to develop some cooperation with the Secretariat of the Escazú Convention in particular to bring our experience, but we already have a team of people engaged in Latin America and in Europe, and it was for me just important to be here to raise this issue, and I'm available as an implementing party with several other colleagues if you deem that it might be useful for both conventions.
Thank you, Massimiliano. Thank you. It's a very productive side event. Usually we don't get volunteers coming forward for follow-ups. We've got a number of them now. First of all, thank you all very much. And again, apologies the frustration of trying to capture for example, what's happening at a national level in Chile or Georgia or Serbia in 1 minute or 4 minutes is very difficult. So I want to apologize, but for an event like this, to ensure proper representation, we have to have Escazú voices, we have to have Aarhus voices. And even when you look at our lineup of speakers, we couldn't even ensure everyone was here. So I thank you for your patience. But I think what really concrete conclusion has come from this is that the exchanges need to be more systematic, they need to be more regular, but also they need to be more focused, and they need to prioritize a number of issues. We do not want large set piece discussions on what we're doing in Escazú, what we're doing in Aarhus. We want to dive deeply on where the real pain points are. And I think, you know, from our colleagues at ECLAC, UNECE, the World Bank, and UNEP, I'll speak on behalf, or not on behalf, but for as well, to say that we're very interested in coordinating this. There's an environmental justice working group with UNEP and the World Bank and UNDP. We would like to facilitate and take this discussion forward. So with that, if you don't mind just sharing a round of applause for all our speakers. Thank you very much.